Okay, so hi and welcome to this week where we're going to be looking at Unit 6. And the title for Unit 6 is Past Lives. Past Lives. So really what this unit is going to be teaching us as we continue through it is using the past tense. So that means we're going to be talking to people and giving them sentences or information about something that happened yesterday, last week, last year, when you were a child. So we're going to be using our past tense to talk about past experiences, past anything. So that's what this unit is all about. So if we go to it, this is what I'm looking at. Unit 6, Past Lives, page 69. So I can see that there's two photos. This is one photo, and this is another photo. One says past and present. So it looks like this photo is from the past, and this one is the present. Present means now. Present, now. So maybe this is brother and sister when they were little, and now present, brother and sister. Same house. Yeah. So in the past and in the present. So let's listen to a conversation to understand this photo. Why two photos? Why one is past, one is present? So we're going to listen to a conversation. Okay.
Track 56, Unit 6 Opener. During the 1970s, Chris forged lots of black and white photographs. Local people in the city. 30 years later, Chris looked for the same people by putting the old photos on his website and in the newspaper. Donna and Stephen saw their photo from 1951, and they contacted Chris. It shows them as children in front of their old family house. They don't live in the house now, but they live in the same city. They returned to the street. Chris took the second photo in 2015.
Hey, Joanna. Okay. So we understand a little bit. I'll tell you what I understood, and then we can listen again. So a man, he likes to take photos from, he's a photographer. He likes to take photos. So this man took this photo of this little kids in front of their house eating ice cream. And he wanted to find out many, many years later, where are these people that he took a photo of? So he put it in a website on the internet, and this people, they saw that this is their photo when they were little. So they said, this is our photo. So then the photographer came to the people and said, can I take your photo again now, many, many years later? Because now they are big. Here they are small. And in front of the same house, he took the photo. So the photographer's name is Chris, Chris, Chris. And this is Stephen and Donna. So Stephen and Donna. Okay, so listen again to the conversation and try and answer the question 2.
Track 56. Unit 6, Opener. During the 1970s, Chris Bush took lots of black and white photographs of local people in his city. 30 years later, Chris looked for the same people by putting the old photos on his website and in the newspaper. Donna and Stephen saw their photo from 1951 and they contacted Chris. It shows them as children in front of their old family house. They don't live in the house now, but they live in the same city. They returned to the street. Chris took the second photo in 2015.
Okay, so I hope that's a little bit now more understanding. So Chris, the photographer, took the black and white photo in the 1950s and 60s, or in the 1970s and 80s? 70s and 80s. Yeah, so the second one, 70s and 80s. The first photo is from 1981. This photo, 1981. So 1981. The second photo is from 2015 or 2015. So you can circle the correct answers. So number 1, 70s and 80s. Number 2, 1981. Number 3, 2015. Okay, so in the 1970s, this is the year. We can see from 1970 to 1979, that's called the 70s. Which year do you think is the end of the 18th century? Yeah, the second one. So from 1789 to 1799. The beginning of the 21st century. Yeah, 2002. So number 3, 2002. You can draw a line. The 60s. Hey, Conrado. Yes, 1960 to 1969. And the 19th century. Yes, the 1800s to 1899. So let's explain that before we continue. So I'll show you how to understand that. So we have, for example, the birth 0, the year 0 is the birth of Jesus Christ. And when we go to the 1st century, that's 100 years. Then we go to the 2nd century, that's from 100 to 200. The 3rd century, 200 to 300. The 4th century, 300 to 400. And we keep going. So we can see the 18th century is the year 1700 to 1799. The 19th century is 1800 to 1899. And the 20th century, 1990 to 1999. And the 21st century, which is now from this year, 2000 to 2099. So which year century were you born in? Who was born in the 20th century? Yeah, who's born in the 21st century? No one's born in this one? No? Hey, Alexandra. No one's born in this one? No? So we're all born in the 20th century. Because I'm born in 1985. Sorry. Yeah. I'm born 1985. Which year are you born in? Kimil?
I born 1984.
Oh, 1984. Yes, 1 year more to me.
Yeah.
And Andres, what year are you born in? ¿Qué años nato? Something like that. 19 1 9 1 9 Is it this one? 1 9 9 8 1999 1998. Yeah. Okay, good. So this is the 20th century. So that's how we know which years to which century. Because sometimes it is easy to say, you know, when you talk about history, it's easy to say in the 20th century, something happened. In the 19th century, you know, in the 18th century, whatever. So that's why we need to know which century with which years. Okay, so that's the centuries. And Van and Solangia were both from both born in the 20th century.
So, let me know your name.
Laila.
Yeah.
Laila. Yes. I'll write it for you here. Yes, sorry. Laila. Laila.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Actually, before we, yes, so in the break we will I'll introduce you to the class. So let's keep continuing a little bit. So that's why we have to know the century to which year. Okay, so okay. Now let's match these people in the time. So if we have the first photographs, to which time? Does anyone know when did the first photograph come in history? The first photograph is actually in the 19th century.
Yeah.
That's when the first photograph is. So let's have a look. Which year exactly? The first photograph. There we go. The 19th century. It was 1826 or 1827. That's when the first photograph was taken. So if I look here, the 19th century, I can see, yes, that's the 19th century. It's in that time. 1826 is in the 19th century. So that's when the first photograph was taken, in the 19th century, in 1826 or 1827. So we can see the connection. Okay, number 2, the euro currency. When did the first euro currency come?
Maybe I think 20th century.
In the 20th century? Yeah, because it came in this one, 20th century. So sometime in 19 something. So let's have a Google when. So first year of euro currency, 1999. So good. In the 20th century, 1999. Okay. So we can see number 2, the euro currency is in the 20th century. The first mobile phone.
I think 20th
In the 20th century? Yes. Yeah, let's have a look at the first mobile phone. So the year of first mobile phone, let's see, 1973. Okay, it was a very, very old phone. 1973. But really, well, we have 1973, so 20th century. But many of us, we started to own a phone in the 21st century. But really, when was it made? 20th century. Okay, and the Beatles. The Beatles is a British group, music.
18th century, I think.
18?
Yeah, 18th century. They maybe
No.
18th century.
No.
I like it.
The Beatles not that old, I don't think. Let's have a look. So which year?
Sorry, 20th century.
Yes, I know. I thought. I
I
think you're confused. Yeah, because 18th, no. So 1960, when this group, they became popular, music, the Beatles. So 1960, 20th century. Can we see the connection? 1960, 20th century. Okay, so that's 20th century. So now we are here, but many things happened in the past. 1960s, the Beatles, they came in the century before, in the 20th century. The last one, the American Revolution. So that's when the people started to fight against the government in America. Which year? So 20th century again?
19th.
Oh, the 19th? Maybe, yeah, the American Revolution. Maybe you're right. I think same, yeah. So the American Revolution between 1765 and 1788 in that year. So that would be the 18th century. So can we see the history for the American Revolution happened in the 18th century? The 18th century. 1765, 1783. It's in this year. Okay, good. So any questions about the centuries? No? Let's continue to the next page. We are going to look at famous faces. So which people and places are on the notes and coins in your country? So are they king, queens, presidents, scientists, musicians, writers, artists, places, or building? Odilon, the Brazilian note. What do you have on there? Is it a president or? Oh, animals. Okay. Yeah. Yep. So Amazonian animals, maybe? Yes.
Tiger, but it's not tiger.
Eh,
In Brazil.
Yes. What's the note called? The
In Portuguese, it's onça.
answer.
Uh, N C.
Yes.
This C in Portuguese has one.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, different. Yes. Is it this one? So 50 reals. Yes. Okay, so this is interesting. In Brazil, their money, the 50 real, has a tiger. Oh, a leopard. Okay, sorry. Yes, an onça. A Pantheria onça. Jaguar. In English, jaguar. They're black. Black, yes. Spotted. Yeah. So that's interesting. So in Brazil, this $50 real has the onça. So we'll do one example from each country. So Brazil, we have 50 real and it has the jaguar on it. Interesting. How about Colombia? Which note can you tell us about that's interesting? Yes, artists are on your notes and politics. So people that work in politics. Do you have an example? Which one? I can look. Oh, what note? You can tell me it's more easy. Which note? Like 20, 30, 40, 100? 2000? And what's the currency? Pesos? Pesos? Okay, so in Colombia, the 2000 pesos notes, let's have a look at images. So in Colombia, is this, yes, 2000 pesos? And it has political people. Which one is new? This one? This one? Okay, so who is this woman? What's her name? Let's read. So her name, is it Deborah? Is this, yeah? This is her name? Okay, so Deborah Arango. So she is on the Colombian 2000 pesos. And she's with politics. So politics. So interesting. Brazil, animal, jaguar, and Colombia, it's a woman. Now in Australia, we have one of our famous one is the 50 Australian dollar note. And this man, you see this one?
I saw.
Yes, so this is the old one, same like Colombia. We have an old one, and this is the new one. So this man is the first Aborigine to be a public speaker, to be an inventor, a writer, the first Aborigine. And his name is David, it should say on the note. I'm not sure to pronounce his surname, but it's David Yuanapon. So this is in Australia. So Australia, our $50 note. So $50, and his name is David Yuanapon. And as I said, his politics and politics and artist and how about Korea?
In Korea, you have king, color, general.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
For example, 10,000
10,000. Yeah,
Yeah.
what's the currency?
won.
U Y E N.
WON.
WON. Oh, one. Okay, this one?
Yeah.
Yes.
He is a king in Korea.
Which century? Interesting.
There is
So he's a king.
I'm not sure. Just a moment, please.
Yeah, that's okay. You can look. So in Korea, we have the 10,000 won, and we have a king, this man. So this is in South Korea?
14th century.
14th century.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Make Korean letters.
He made
Korean letters.
Cor-
For example, alphabet, Korean alphabet. He made Korean alphabet.
what's that?
Korean letters.
Letters?
Yeah, letters. For example,
The writing.
yeah, writing.
Interesting.
Yeah. For example, alphabet in here, alphabet, yeah.
Okay, so this man from the 14th century, so very long time ago, that's 1300 to 1399. So from this year, 1300 to 1399. So this man, he invented the Korean letters, the letter system for the writing. So very interesting, very like long time ago, king.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So interesting. Sorry? Another one for Colombia. Yes. Which what's the sorry, Deborah is an artist. Yes. Okay, interesting, an artist. Does she paint? Okay, interesting. So for Colombia, the 2,000 pesos, Deborah, the woman, she's an artist. So interesting how around the world we have different currencies and different people, animals. In Brazil, animals. So it's very different. Okay, let's read an article and have a look. So I'll read and then you can follow me with the reading. So we have the title, Famous Faces. So George Washington, you can repeat, yeah? So George Washington was the first president of the United States of America. He was born in 1732 and lived during the American Revolution. He died in 1799. But his face wasn't on the US dollar until the 19th century. Now, his face is on the US $1 note. And it is famous around the world. On January 1, 2002, there was a new currency in Europe, the euro. The new notes were different from traditional money because there weren't any famous people on the notes. Instead, there were pictures of different types of buildings from different times and places across Europe. Frida Kahlo, maybe I say wrong, painted and studied art when she was young. On August 21st, 1929, she married the artist Diego Rivera, and they lived and worked in Mexico City. During the 1930s, they traveled around the world. Their paintings were famous in many countries. Today, Frida and Diego's faces are on the Mexican 500 peso note. Okay, so number 1, George Washington is C. We can see this is George Washington from the USA. Number 2 is B, the euro. So lots of buildings and places on their euro. Number 3 is A, Frida Kahlo and her husband, maybe. So interesting, famous faces and on the currency, on money. Okay, so let's see, number 3, if the sentences are true or false. So George Washington was an American president. True. True information. That's a fact. True. His face is on every $10 note. False. F. False. No, it's on the $1 note. Now, on the $1 note. Euro notes have famous faces on them. False. Why? Because now they have buildings, pictures of buildings and places. Number 4, some euro notes have pictures of cities. True. Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera were artists. True. Their faces are on different Mexican notes. False. Only on the 500 peso. Yes. Okay, let's look at some grammar. So when we use the words was and were. So let's look at these sentences. George Washington was the first president of the United States of America. His face wasn't on the US dollar. The new notes were different from traditional money. They weren't any famous people on the new euros. When was he born? And were they famous? So before I talk about the rules, are the sentences here past or present now? Past. Yep, past. Not now. George Washington is not alive now, so it's in the past. Now means now, in this moment, right now. What is the infinitive form of the verbs in bold? It comes from the verb to be. So we have this verb to be, and if I put it in the past, it's was for singular and were for plural. So for example, I was home last weekend. Were is for 2 or more people. So my parents, they were at a party on the weekend. So that's when I use the infinitive is to be. So for number 2, the answer is to be. Which form do we use for you, they, and we? So I say you were, we were, and they were. So I pick a subject. If it's you, we, or they, I have to use were. Which forms do we use for I, he, she, it? So if the subject is I, he, she, or it, was. I was, he was, she was, it was. And we use to be in the past because we do have to be in the present and to be in the future. But for now, I just want to look at the verb, the action to be in the past. So we use it when we talk about age, our age. So last year I was whatever, age. Location, last month I was in Brazil, for example. We use it to talk about our jobs. Last year I was a doctor. And we use it when we talk about adjectives. So remember, an adjective gives us information about the noun. Is it tall, beautiful, big, large, small, heavy? So I was tired yesterday, an adjective. Or I was sleepy yesterday. Okay, so it's not M is R because that's in the present. So we don't want to use M is R. We want to talk just about the past and to be. So we use was or were. Interesting. Yeah. Okay, let's practice. So let's look at, the negative. To make a negative, we just add not. So was is wasn't and were is weren't. So yesterday I wasn't in class, and weren't is, for example, we weren't drinking coffee last night. Okay, so that's the negative. And we've talked about all of it. So the past, the infinitive is to be. We've talked about the subject, you, they, we, and then I, he, she, it. And the negative. Okay, let's look at the next page. So let's choose the correct options to complete the text about Queen Elizabeth. So we know now we don't have a Queen Elizabeth, but let's read the text. So we have the famous face of Queen Elizabeth II is on many different notes. Letizia, would you like to do one sentence? Oh, Letizia? Yes, sorry. When she was, because were is only for they or we. So when she was, yes, number one is was. So you can read all the way till you see a full stop, one sentence. That's okay. Yeah, number one was. A child. So when she was a child, she was on the Canadian dollar. Joanna, next sentence. There were. Okay, perfect. So let's read that again. So that was in 1936. By 1953, now this is plural, so you must use were. There were 9 countries with her face on their notes. But surprisingly, the Queen's face, she wasn't, number 4, wasn't on the British pound note until 1960. So her face was on many different countries, but not on the English British pound. Next sentence, Mariana. Okay, so for a long time, there weren't, sorry, because it is plural next. There weren't any happy faces of the Queen on pounds notes. So be careful with your ES. You have to make sure it sounds like a Z. Faces. So there weren't, because it's plural, any happy faces on the Queen on pound notes. But finally, in 2002, this is singular, there was. So there can be used with singular or plural. So it's there was a happy face. Not were, it's was here. There was a happy face on the Scottish £5 note because that's singular. Good. So we can see the difference when we say there was is used for singular nouns and there were for plural nouns. So for example, there was a book on the table, but there were many books on the table. So you got to be careful because they both have there But how do I know which one to use, was or were? I must see if the word after the noun is singular or plural. If it's plural, we will see the S. So for number 5, for a long time, there weren't any happy faces. Faces is the noun. Happy is the adjective. So there weren't any happy faces. Number 6, there was. That's singular. Happy is a adjective, and face is the noun. So there was a happy face. Number 6. Okay, so that's how we know to use was or when to use were. So we can see were has the plural S. Okay, now let's work in pairs and ask and answer questions to complete texts about the other people on currencies. So just with the people next to you. So one student is going to be student A and the other one will be student B. So student A, so pick who's going to be student A, turn to page 153. Student B, turn to page 155. So let's do Joanna and so just going back a bit to the notes, Solange told us that the figures that are stamped on the bills of money from Brazil, they're fauna such as hummingbirds, sea turtles, herons, red macaws, and jaguars. Thank you for sharing that for Brazil. Interesting information. So I'll add that to my notes. Okay, so we'll come back after that exercise. Okay, so let's continue. We're now looking at, so let's just have a recap. So recap means let's look at what we have learned. So we've talked about the past tense. So we know we have the past, the present, and the future. So anytime we make sentences or we give information, we need to think, is it something in the past? Like yesterday I did something, or last week, or last year, or when I was a kid? Then I need to use the rules that are for the past tense. Or do you want to give someone some information now about this moment right now? Then I need to use the present tense. Or do I want to talk about the future, tomorrow, next week, next year? Then that's the future tense. So we're in the past tense, and we learned that the first one to learn, the first action word, the verb, is to be. And to be is used when we want to give people information about our name, our location, our age, our job, and to talk about adjectives about ourselves. And we say I, so we put the subject first. So I was, he was, she was, it was, or they were, or we were. And then that's when we use to be. So that to be in the past is was or were. And if we want to make it a negative, like I am not a doctor, I am not living in Sydney, then I need to say not. So I wasn't or I was not. If it was for we or they were not, or they or we were not. So that's where we got up to. So now, as I said, we use the past tense to talk about the past. So before the subject and the verb, we can add time expression. Now, a time expression is words like yesterday, last night, 10 years ago, when I was a kid, 2 weeks ago. That's a time expression. So we can add time expression to start the sentence. Thank you, Mariana. Plus subject, plus, and maybe shut that door after because I could hear it's loud. And then the verb. So that's what we could do. So we can put time expression, subject, verb, time expression in the beginning. And here are some examples of those time expressions. So remember, it's before the subject, the person who you're going to talk about that's doing the action. So when I was a child, yesterday, during the 19th century, so maybe you're talking about some history, some information about history, the 60s, last Monday evening, before the 18th century, in 1799, this morning, yes, that is past, because now is evening. So this morning is a past time expression. So we'll make sure that these are past time expressions. Last March, last month, on January the 1st, 2000, so you can even give an exact date, a week ago. Or you could say on Christmas last year, on my birthday last year, whatever. So we put the time expression first, then the subject, I, you, he, she, it, we, they, and then the action that they do. So let's put a number to these time expressions. Which one is more old, and then which one is the recent one? So I'll give you 1 minute to do this exercise. Number 7. So for example, number 1 would be, they've done it for us, before the 18th century. Now remember, let's look back. 18th century is these years. So that's definitely the oldest. That's number 1. Number 2, I'll do that one for you, is in 1799. Yes, because now that's at the end, sorry, before the 18th century, maybe the 15th, 16th, 15th. So now 1979 is the 18th century. Okay, so just number them from 1 to 10. Number 10 is the one that's most recent. So last night, this evening, this morning. Okay, I'll give you 1 minute to do that, and then we'll check them. Okay, so let's check them. So number 1, before the 18th century, so F. Then we had number 2 in 1799, yes, G. What's the third one? After, during the 19th century, yep, C. Because the 19th century is this year, 19th century, 1800 to 1899. Okay. The fourth one after C, the 60s, yep, D. Number 5, when I was a child. 6, on January the 1st, 2000, J. 7, last March, I. Yep. Number 8, a week ago. 9, last Monday evening. Because they're pretty much the same. A week ago and last Monday evening is exactly the same time. So if we pretend today is Tuesday, then it would still be a week ago is K, and then last Monday evening would be yesterday, so 9 is E. Yeah, that's funny because it's exactly the same day. And number 10 is yesterday. So again, yeah, we have to just imagine that last week is a little bit longer and not on a Monday. Okay, so that's the answers. So from the more old time to the recent time. So we've got, and this morning, yeah, there's 11 of them. Okay, and H, this morning. An hour ago is very recent. A minute ago is more recent. Okay, so write was or were questions with these words. So let's talk about first, how do we make a question? So to make a question, we start with the 6 W's. Now the 6 W's are what, when, where, why, who, and where, why, who, what, when, where, why, who. And there's one more, I just can't think of that. So that's how we start the question. We can start with the first W, and then we add was or were. So the reason I say was or were, because I don't know if I'm saying, the subject, and then was or were. So that's how we make a question. So let's look at number 1. So when, that's when I start, because I know to make a question in the past simple, I must start one of the ways, there's many ways, but one of the ways is to start with one of the 6 W's. So it depends if I want to know what, like what is this book about? Or when is about time, like when did you come to Australia? Or where is about location, where do you live in Brazil? Like where exactly? Why, I want to know the reason for something, like why do you not drink coffee or something? And who is about a person, who are you married to? What is her name? So that's why we start with one of the W's and then the subject. So is it, what, when, where, why, who, the subject, I, you, he, she, it, we, they, and then was or were. So it depends on the subject if I need to pick was or were. So number 1, Alexandria, how would you make that a question?
When you were born.
Yeah, when were. Yeah. No, when were. Because it's plural, grandparents. So when were, so when were your grandparents born? Yep, when. So when is about time? In 1920, in 1910. So when? I want to know the time. When? What year? What century? Maybe you can answer by the century. So let's have a look. So we've got the 6 W's. Were. Sorry, let me go back a bit. So let me repeat that. So when we make a question, we start with the 6 W's. So what is about wanting to know, what is this book about? When is about time. Where is about location. Where were you born in Brazil? Why? The reason. Why did you do that? Who is about a person. Who is your wife? And then we add was or were, and then the subject. So when were the subject, your grandparents, born. And then the verb. So that's the rule. So I'll put this as our rule in this color. So very easy to make a question in the past. When were, now you got to remember grandparents, there's an S, it's plural, it's more than one person. So it must be were. When were they born? Your grandparents, they, when were they born? Okay, number 2, Letizia, how do I make that a question? Yeah, so again, when, that's one of the 6 W's, was, your, because it's singular, because you remember it's was, so when was your, and then whatever information I want to know. When was your last holiday? So when is about time. Number 3, Fernando. Where were you? So for you, yeah, where were you on January the 1st this year? Now, I know it's, if you make a normal sentence, you put subject, verb. It's I was, you were. So it's you were, yeah? I was. Was is only for I, he, she, it. Were is for you, we, they. So it becomes, where were you on January the 1st this year? Now, I know that were sounds, I told you it's plural for more than one people because it's used with we and they, but it's used with you. Good. Where were you on January the 1st this year? So I want to know about location. Where were you? Were you in Australia? Were you in Colombia? Where were you? 4. Do you want to have a go, Daniel? What month were you born in? Yes. So what month? So I'm going to answer January, December, February. What month were you? So we have were you. Number 5, Jimin.
Some famous people in the 20th century.
Who were? Did you say who were? Because for plural?
Yes.
Yeah, who were some famous people in the 20th century? Good question. So who is about people. So you have to give me names. This person and this woman and that man. So who? Okay, very easy. That's making question in the past simple. That's one of many ways. So this is how we do it. What's that? Very easy, good. Oh yeah, the hardest one maybe is you were. So you feel like you want to say you was, but it's not. It's you were. Were you at home on the weekend? When were you born? Where were you raised? Why were you sad yesterday? So you and were go together. Okay, let's look at some more grammar. Now we only looked at one action word, to be. Remember, to be. And to make it in the past was or were. But let's look at other action words. All of them, you know, to sleep, to play, to read, to write, to any action that someone is doing, the subject. So we use the past simple to talk about finished actions and events. So make sure it's already been finished. Like yesterday, I did my homework. That's it. I'm not doing it now. I did it yesterday. Yesterday, I went to the beach. I'm not doing it now. I did it yesterday. It's finished. Now I'm here in class. So we need to use the past to talk about actions that happened and they're finished. So for example, they worked in Mexico City. So maybe I'm talking about Fernando's grandparents, you know, when they were young, they went and worked in Mexico City. They're not doing it now because they're back in Brazil. But, you know, 10 years ago, Fernando's parents worked in Mexico City. Not now, in the past. So I'll give you more examples and then we'll talk about the rules. He lived in the 18th century. So we're talking about a man, someone, and he lived. He's not living now. He lived in the 18th century. So if we look back, the 18th century is a long time ago. He's not a, is he a, Conrad? So no one is living anymore now in this time, right? Yes, Conrado. She studied art. So maybe now she finished. So, you know, she studied art. She's not doing it now. She did it many years ago or last year. So it's a finished action. They traveled in Europe. Maybe I'm talking about Odilon and his wife. So 2 years ago, Odilon and his wife, they traveled in Europe. They're in Australia now. But 2 years ago, they traveled in Europe. Now, the rule is that we add an ED. So this is for the past simple. So remember, we do have the past continuous, we have the past perfect, we have the modals, we have lots of other ways to talk about the past. This is one way we talk about the past. So just remember, it's only one way. And it's called the past simple. We add an ED. That's the rule. So if the verb, the action ends in a Y, you add IED. If it ends in an L, you make sure that you double the L and then add ED. That's just something to be careful of. They're called the regular verbs, but there's some that are irregular. Now, how do you know? You don't know. You just have to learn which verbs are irregular because there's no rule. They all look different. There's no ending that look the same. They all look very different. So examples are went. Yesterday, I went to the shops. Not go or goed, it's went. This verb comes from make. So to make something, you know, like, so yesterday, it's not I maked, it's I made. I made a cake. The action see, so it's not yesterday I seed my friend, it's yesterday I saw my friend. And these are just other examples. So what I'm trying to show you is that they do not take the ED. We can see they end very different. There's no rule. You just have to learn them. They all have different endings. So that's just, they're called irregular because they break the rule. You do not add ED, they break the rule. They have their own rule. So that's just some examples. But the regular ones, lived, studied, painted, died, traveled, worked, finished, started, we can see that they are regular. So these are just some examples of regular. You just add an ED. Except remember, if it ends in a Y, so study, to study, so studied, IED. Or if it ends in an L, travel, to travel, traveled, double LED. So look at the sentences in the grammar box. Let's go back here. What do we usually add to regular verbs to make the past simple? What do we add to the regular verbs? Ed. Yep, so you can put ed as an answer. What is different about the verbs live, study, and travel? Well, live is regular, so just add ed. Study ends in a y, so we need to add an I before the ed. And travel ends in an L, so we need to double the L before we add the ed. So easy? Yeah. Okay, 10. Let's practice. Number 1, let's start with, so we're going to do these sentences and put the verb, we can see it says to live. We need to put that in the past. So we know the rule now, but let's put it in the past. So I'll start with Solange. Are you here? Yes. She's sleeping, but she actually did the exercises. She finished already, the exercises. Okay, so Van. Okay, we'll just start with Jimin, number 1. Van he's eating. Okay, number 1.
Obama did White House from 2009 to 2017.
Yes. So I'll write the answers. I'm just trying to see where I can write the answers. I'll put them here. Okay, so we have lived. So the first one is lived. Yeah, Barack Obama lived in the White House from 2009 to 2017. Is he living in the White House now? No. In the future? We don't know, but in the past, yes, he lived in the White House from 2009 to 2017, finished, completed action. Number 2, Daniel. Yeah, they studied English together at university. 3, Conrado. Yeah, the artist Georgia O'Keeffe painted during the 20th century. 4, Fernando. Yes, 1955. So the composer Arthur Honegger died in 1955. Yeah, perfect. Died. And 5, Odilon. Yeah, so the astronaut Sally Ride traveled. So we need to double the L. So add one more L, ED, traveled into space in 1983. 6, Letizia. Yeah, so Angela Merkel, it's worked. So I know the W, a lot of people have trouble. So worked. So she worked, so we just add an ED, it's irregular, as a scientist. So scientist. Before she was chancellor of Germany. Chancellor is the head of the government in some European countries. The head of the government. Yeah. They're in charge of foreign affairs. A person who is in charge of foreign affairs. A person whose duty relates to justice. Could be a secretary to a king or noble or of an embassy. So that's what she was. So she's not doing it now, but she worked as a scientist before she was a chancellor of Germany. Number 7, Joanna. Yeah, I finished university last year with a degree in arts. Yeah, so we just add the ED, finished, regular verb. And the last one, 8, Mariana. Started. You didn't say the ED, so started. Yeah, so my parents started their business before I was born. Not now, they're not starting it now or tomorrow. They did it in the past, completed action before I was born. So let's look at pronunciation. How do we pronounce the ED ending? So some ED adds an extra syllabus to the verbs in the past. A syllabus is like, for example, the word love is just one syllabus, love. But if I said the word Sunday, like yesterday, Sunday, that has 2 syllables. So it's like, think of them like sounds, Sunday. But love was just love, just one sound, one syllabus. 3 syllabus is a word like adventure. Adventure. You can see I make like adventure. That's 3 syllabus. You can have 4 syllabus. That's a word like that's a word like, let me see, 4. That's a word like astronaut. Astronaut. Alligator. Aquarium. 4 words. Asparagus. 4 syllables. America. 4 syllables. Okay, so let's see if we're going to listen to them and we're going to write how many syllables do we hear? 1, 2, 3, or 4? So So if I said the word live, that's one syllable. You can hear it, just live, love. There's no live, it's live, live. Paint, that's one syllable, paint. But if I say lived, still one, lived. Painted, still two. It becomes two. Paint, ed, painted. The reason lived is not two, because if it was two, it would sound like lived, which is wrong. It's lived, not live-edded. There's no two sounds. It's lived. So be careful. Just because you add an ed, it doesn't mean it's going to have two syllables, because lived stayed sounding like one syllable. So like, how many syllables is that? One? Yeah, like, one. What about liked? Yeah, it didn't change, liked. Because it's not liked, like ed, that's two syllables. That's not how you pronounce the word. Liked. Want. One. Wanted. Two. Wanted. You can hear the two sounds. Wanted. Work. One. Worked. One. Yes, because not work ed, work it. I can't make it two. It's hard because it's the wrong pronunciation. It's worked. So when it becomes one, I'll show you a trick. When it's one syllabus, sorry, syllables. When it's one syllables in the past, so for example, live, it becomes lived. Now what happens is it's L-I-V and the E is like silent and then it's D. That's why. Lived, lived. So the E is silent when it becomes a one. But if you look at, so I cut off the E there, just make sure the pronunciation lived. But if I look at the word two syllables, for example, paint, it became painted. So what happened with the sounds? Paint, ed. Pain, ted. So it became like that, the sound. The E, you pronounce it because it became ted. You pronounce, you cut off the T from the action verb paint and you put it with the ed, pain, ted. Whereas here, you just said lived. There's no E, lived. So it's a four-letter word, if you know what I mean, by sound. So it stayed the same. Live, lived. The E was silent. This one, pain, ted. I'll show you one more here. So we had like, became liked. So the E became silent. Like, there's no E. Liked, liked. There's no E sound. But another one here, want, became wanted. Wanted. So that's how we know. So be careful. Sometimes the E can be silent, or sometimes it gets attached to the last letter of the action verb and it makes ted, ted. So this one is not liked, liked. There's no T. This is not lived. Work. Work, one. Worked. One. You're not listening properly. It's one. So how do we know? I think maybe if they end in T, they become two. Because I'm seeing that if I add the work here, it's the same, the silent. The E becomes silent. Work, worked. The E is silent. So make sure you cut off that. You don't say that E. So you can't see it, but I'm trying to put an X. I'm trying to take away. That's what it should sound like. Lived, liked, worked, worked. But the ones that end in a T, this is where the second syllabus is coming. So if I do the next word, start, how many syllables? One. So how about started? Fernando? Two. Yes. Because it ends in a T. So that's how you know. You make a TED. TED, started. Yeah. Play. Played. One, silent E. Played. Played. So I went straight for the D. I made the E silent. And I said played, lived, liked, worked. Not painted, wanted, started. The sounds at the end are very different. Visit. One. Now this is a trick one. How about visited? Three. So how? If it has an I, the I becomes its own sound. So vis, e, ted. So if the action verb has an I in it, then the I has its own stop. So vis, e, ted. Three. Yeah? What's another action word that has three in the past? What can you think of? Maybe think of the action word first. So to visit, to what? What action verb has an I in it? I think IT. Yeah, I'll think of an example. Travel. Travel. Two. So travel comes here. Travel. And in the past, how many? If I said traveled, two. Because the E becomes silent. Sorry, not the E becomes silent. Traveled. So if it ends in a T, it becomes attached to the ED. Or if it ends in an EL, that becomes attached to the ED. Traveled. Interesting. So only visited has three. Okay, I'll play the audio so you can hear that. And then we'll do some writing. So have a listen again. So you've got the answers. See if you can hear the how many syllables there are.
Track 59, Unit 6A. 1. Loop. Loop. 2. Paint. Painted. 3. Like. Liked. 4. Wanted. 5. Work. Worked. 6. Start. Started. 7. Play. Play. 8. Visit. Visited. 9. Travel. Travel.
Okay, so I hope you heard how many syllables there are. Okay, so now what are we going to do? We're going to get into groups. I'm just creating the groups. And together in your groups, you're going to pick a famous person and you're going to talk about the famous person. So you're going to come up and tell us. So a famous person, I'm going to make it a little bit different to the exercise in number 12. So you have to pick a person in history that's no longer living, and you have to tell us about that person. It could be the president of a country. It could be a famous musician. It could be anyone that's famous. So you have to use your past tense, and you're going to come up, present the person, and tell us about them. You know, they were born in whatever country. So remember to use your was and were. What did they do? They were famous for whatever they did. Okay, so your groups are, so we'll do the groups and then we'll come back and present them. Okay, so let's check some of the writing. So if you want to look at some grammar, this is the time to check. So we're practicing our past tense. We'll check the grammar, see if and under, and we will present them tomorrow. So we have Shakira here. Let's have a look if this group, Joanna's group, has used the correct past tense. So Shakira was, perfect. We know I was, I, and he, she, it was. So good. Shakira was born on February 1977 in Colombia. Her first albums were, good. So you're using were, see you tomorrow, because it's plural. There's many albums. The subject is the albums, plural. So the albums were Magia in 1991 and Peligro 1993. So make sure you capitalize the names of albums, same as when we talk about capitalizing countries, names of people, and remember there's many other things. So names of albums need to be capitalized. She is the only child, so that's why I wanted past, person that's passed away, because we want to practice past, but she is, because she's still living, yes, she is the only child of William, so capital for his surname, Merabak, and Nydia Ripoll. Her father, William, was, so finished past action, was born in New York City. The name of a city, it all needs to be capitalized. Shakira wrote, so that's an irregular verb, wrote. The first poem, maybe her first poem, is that the name of the poem or titled? So it's titled. So titled, again, names of books, authors, albums, they need to be capitalized. So titled The Crystal Rose. When she was, good, when she was only 4 years old. Perfect. Thank you. So thank you for sharing that. We have from Solange about Leonardo da Vinci, wrote from right to left. So with his hand, he used to be able to write from right to left. So we write from left to right. So he could write the opposite way. You needed a mirror to read his handwriting. He was, so very good, he was a genius. He could write one sentence with his right hand and a different sentence with his left hand. Good. He invented, good, we add the ed to the past action. He invented scissors. He drew. So this was a regular past. This is an irregular past. It does not take the ed. So he drew architect's plans, but never built a building. Jonathan, Sia, he lost most of the paintings and drawings he did in Milan. He had, good, so past of to have. He had many talents. He made. So we got subject, verb. This verb is an irregular. It does not take the ed. It breaks the rules. So he made models, and in his notebooks, there were, very good using there were plans for a tank, a helicopter, and a submarine. His scientific observations were, good, because plural, it's a noun. His observations, they were 100 years before his time. So he could do something amazing that wasn't in his time. It was for the future. So good. So thank you for writing that one, Solange. So we will keep reading some more tomorrow. And yes, we will leave it there. So we looked at the past simple. So it's the most simple of all the grammar tenses. It's the past simple. We add an ed, and we talk about actions that have happened in the past and they're finished. They're completed. They're not happening anymore. So we looked at time expressions. You know, we say yesterday, last night, last year. So start your sentence with the time. You know, last week, 10 years ago when I was a kid. Then add the subject, I, you, he, she, it, we, they, and then add the verb. So remember the verb, we need to add an ed, but it could be irregular. So it just breaks the rule. You have to learn what they are. So that's how we talk about the past. And we'll continue all of this more tomorrow. So